Hello my lovely vampires, humans, and everything in between. I'm Syrinx, I'm a cosplayer, a TTRPG player, and a LARPer, and in this video, I'm going to be continuing a very interesting vampire story. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about my experience at Darkness Emergent LA 2026. You heard that correctly. A full year has passed since the last Darkness Emergent LA, which is crazy for me to think about. Now what I'm going to be talking to you about is a LARP. And if you don't know what LARPing is, LARP stands for live action roleplay. Basically, you dress up and play pretend with other adults. You get together for an evening, a weekend, or even a full week to tell and experience an immersive story together. And if you don't know what Darkness Emergent is an immersive experience featuring the largest and most dynamic Vampire the Masquerade live-action role-playing, tabletop, and community celebration in the United States, organized by By Night Studio. Now, I've talked about Darkness Emergent twice now on this channel, and if you haven't seen any of those videos, feel free to check them out on the channel and then come back to this video once you've watched all of them, because then you'll also be caught up on the story I will be continuing in this video. The event went on from Thursday up until Monday, and the days were filled with panels, side LARPs, and tabletop games. And each night of the event there are also after-hour social events. One of these events was in-game, and that was Serafin Club on Thursday evening itself, and then on other evenings you had fun little get-togethers like the 7th Tradition Rave, the Succubus Club, and also, of course, karaoke. I won't go too much into detail about my days spent at Darkness Emergent because I did not participate in any of the side LARPs, but I do think there was a genuine great expansion on the panels. I attended a bunch of the panels. A lot of people of the White Wolf team were there, and they had some fun World of Darkness panels, as well as a bunch of LARP or tabletop panels. I think the combination that Darkness Emergent is trying to do between a convention and a LARP actually works really well, and I'm very excited to see this panel side of the event grow and improve even more in future editions. I just had a great time during the days getting to know the community outside of the game and also taking the chance to calibrate with some players before we actually went on the LARP floor. Speaking about the LARP floor, I think it's time we continue the story that we've been telling these past 2 videos now. And a reminder that if you have not watched any of the 2 previous videos, you maybe should before you continue on past this point. Last warning. Alright, and now that we are settled in, let's once again continue our vampire story for what I thought to be the final time. More on that later. I reprised my role of Ida Falcoy, my Camarilla Ravna. She is part of the Chicago Marshall Coterie, but to switch things up this time around, we said that she was on an exchange program to the domain of Louisville under Prince Victoria, who was played by Cassidy. And then, as I like to do before these events, I like to sit down and think about what kind of story I want to tell with my character and who I want involved in that story. So, I yet again made some character connection ties with Bully, who is once again going to be playing Toledo. And then, if you remember correctly, last time in Atlanta, we had Rowan there. Sadly, she could not be there, and then I yet again added 2 new adopted children into Ida's retinue, with Isabella, who is played by Leticia, and Elodie, who you might recognize from the Atlanta video, played by Brooke. And with that knowledge, it was once again time to travel to LA, and for me to take these things out for the rest of the video. It was stuck, imagine that. So, after the whirlwind that was Atlanta, both Ida and Toledo had decided to give this relationship dating thing a real try. However, as the months passed by, it became clear that, well, putting in the work for a relationship is quite hard, and it takes a lot of personal growth to become a good and healthy person to be in a relationship with. Something that Ida and Toledo were both trying, but let's say they weren't super successful in so far. Toledo had become quite controlling, and you'll find out ways in which he was a bit later on in the story. However, for Ida, she was trying to come to terms with all of these emotions and her upbringing. She was trying to change decades of routines and behavior in only the span of a few months. And well, if you rush a growth process, we all know that doesn't go very well. So recently, Ida had become more and more frustrated about her lack of growth and how difficult this all felt, leading to her desperately trying to pretend to be the best version to Toledo and everyone around, but secretly becoming miserable from how this was all making her feel. And she was not used to feeling. We start the story at Meet the Authorities, which was on Thursday evening. I walk into the gathering fashionably late on the arm of Marcus, played by Victor. Marcus is a visiting Brazilian La Sombra, and we had interacted before in LA. Also, his companion, Isabella, who had mentioned before, had become this kind of ward that Ida had been looking after during their time in Los Angeles. So the both of us walk in and stop as I spot my prince, who I, of course, greet properly. My charming facade drops a little bit as Victoria and several kindred around her ask if I had already seen Toledo and if I wanted them to bring me to my man. In an agitated way, I respond that if I want to find him, I will surely find him. However, they do mention something interesting, namely that Toledo apparently brought in a 2-day-old Zmitzi fledgling. Something that immediately rings some alarm bells. I'm also immediately informed that apparently Nellie G, who is played by Cynthia Marie, is recording some kind of reality show, and everyone by being here is immediately accepting the fact that they will be filmed and possibly put in this reality show. An absolutely insanely masquerade-breaking idea, to which I also find out that Renato, once again played by Jason Carl, is planning to make a counter-production to in some way ensure that the Masquerade is still safe through this counter-production. Totally not a recipe for disaster. I spot Toledo across the room and I decide I should be brave and go see my man, and also specifically find out who this Zmitzi fledgling is. As I walk up, a bright smile, I give a little kiss to Toledo, who is talking to some Camarilla prints. However, I immediately spot this young woman with a camera taking pictures and seemingly filming Toledo and me. When I look confused, Toledo notices and he says that that is Samantha, who is played by Paula. And I immediately take a guess and ask, that's the Zmitzi fledgling. Toledo asks how I know that, but I just wave that aside as Samantha comes my way. She asks me if I mind her taking pictures and videos of the two of us, because apparently Toledo had given her the task to film the both of us together because he wanted those memories on tape. I am trying to be the good girlfriend here, and I say that as long as the tapes don't get out anywhere and it's only for Toledo, then it's fine and it's not her problem. I'll take it up with Toledo afterwards. However, now that I know that she is a 2-day-old fledgling that Toledo brought, I ask her if she wants to go get a drink together. And Toledo gives a panicked look at the two of us going off alone to have a conversation. But ain't no man gonna stop Ida when she smells an innocent fledgling. Samantha and I go to sit down at a table together, and I ask her a little bit about where she came from and what exactly happened because, well, I had heard that she was only 2 days old. Apparently, she stumbled onto her sire, called Wormwood, who was played by David. She was a podcaster who had stumbled across the story of Wormwood online. Some people saying that this entombed guy had somehow managed to grow a cult following in the time that he was entombed, and being intrigued by the story for her podcast, she went to the location. She proceeded to take out the stake that had tortured Wormwood, and from one thing came the other. Wormwood frenzied, killed her, and decided to embrace her and bring her back. You could really say she was at the wrong place at the wrong time. So that's immediately an answer to my question whether or not she chose this existence. However, as I'm asking what happened to her, she proceeds to ask me if I'm alright and asks what my relation with my sire is. Every time in the past, I would have found some way to not have this conversation, but as we established, I am trying to change. And Toledo has been giving me these self-help books, which I took some notes of, so I pick up my notes, go through them, and I tell her, I've learned that I am a dismissive avoidant, and so if I'm uncomfortable in a situation or a conversation, I should try to stick around a few moments longer and try to share a few details about myself. So blatantly telling her this is the first time I'm opening up to anyone, I tell her about my sire. I tell her that I spent decades with them, and they were kind of this motherly figure to me. I chose this existence, but our relationship soured. I don't go into the details of how I found out that they were a horrible person as well, and that I diablerized them to Samantha, because I don't want to scare the girl. She's literally 2 days old. I'm trying to gauge how much she knows of seeing that this is an innocent person who did not choose this existence. So immediately my brain goes to, well, I need to protect her. However, our conversation ends there as another person comes to stand next to my chair. I look up and I see a face that I haven't seen in a very, very long time. Next to my chair, shock on his face, is standing Father Aeneas, played by Robert. A long time ago, Aeneas and Ida used to be in a coterie together in Greece. But when Ida had to leave for a moment and came back, she found out that Aeneas' sire had been killed, and it was presumed that Aeneas had been killed as well. The two of them had always really worked together quite well, and their morals and ideologies in this world aligned a lot. She had trusted and found a caring shoulder in Aeneas, but when he was presumably gone with no proof or lead otherwise, she left Greece to cross the ocean and never thought of it again. But now, there was someone standing next to her chair, looking like Aeneas. So, not believing what she is seeing, she thinks that this might be some sweetie who had once seen Aeneas and took over his personality, because that has happened multiple times. As Aeneas recognizes Ida's face, he says, "Anastasia, it couldn't be you now, could it?" To which I act a bit aloof, and I try to brush him aside, but when it becomes clear that he actually is Aeneas, her Aeneas from Greece, she is left a bit shocked and doesn't know how to respond in this very public environment. Samantha gets up from her chair and says that she will leave the two of them alone because they clearly need to talk. We're both kind of in shock that the other person is alive, because Aeneas brings up the fact that I survived the week of nightmares, which I brush off. We don't want to talk about emotions or rough patches in our history, really. I said, it's no big deal. Yeah, I survived it. And apparently when his sire was killed, Aeneas ran into the ocean and found God there. He didn't used to be this religious before, but now he was wearing a clerical collar. And apparently in the decades that had passed, he had started building these refuges. He mentions that he has some followers with him here tonight, one of whom is Elodie, who, of course, I know Elodie. We're getting a little bit emotional here, and clearly both of us don't really know how to deal with those emotions. I am trying to, well, accept them, but also we're in a very public setting. I'm not gonna cry in this very public setting. And I don't know how to feel about this person from my past being back. And Aeneas is getting quite emotional, doesn't know how to act. Basically at the same time, we both say that we're happy the other one isn't dead. And he takes my hand and says that he still cares for me. Clearly not comfortable continuing this conversation right at this moment. We say that we'll talk again, and as a last goodbye, he says that he could help me deal with my emotions. Very sinister. I take off to the side and I see another more pleasant, familiar face, namely Dominic, played by Vin. Dominic also resides in the domain of Louisville underneath our Prince Victoria. And as I'm trying to seek a little bit of reprieve, the conversation topic immediately shifts as Dominic says, "Really? You're together with Toledo? You deserve better." Giving you a glimpse into my mind at that moment, I've been more and more so struggling with the fact that I think Toledo deserves better than me, or what I can give him currently. I'm trying so desperately to change the way I express emotions, to change the way I think and feel, but I can't help thinking it's just not enough. Luckily, my train of thought is stopped as Elodie joins us. And she indeed starts talking about Aeneas and her new religion. She had these pamphlets that she gave to people. Hold on, I have one in my scrapbook. If you can see it right over here, it says "The Refuge" very ominously. So she starts talking about this new religion that she's found, and Father Aeneas, how he has been helping her. But then the conversation shifts a little bit to asking how I know Father Aeneas and why I have that effect on him, because apparently she hasn't seen him that emotional in the entire time that she has known him. Going back to my old habits, I say that we just knew each other from way back when. It's not important right now. What's important is her new interest. You really have to imagine this entire conversation being a mother who is trying to understand her daughter's emo phase, but she's fully convinced this is just a phase. However, if I were to say to Elodie that this is just a phase and it'll pass, she'll say it's not a phase, mom, and go on, or whatever. So I don't say that. I just try to understand it a little bit and say, that's great for you, sweetie. Are you having fun with it? This conversation dies down very awkwardly, and as it does, the topic of this reality show comes up, to which Elodie suggests that she wants to be in the production of Nelly G, and that it wouldn't be a bad idea if I went into the counter-production idea from Renato. I'm not fully convinced of this idea yet, however, I do think that it might be a good idea to go talk to Baron Victor Temple, who's played by B-Dave. So I take off and find Baron Temple where he's standing. We have met before in LA. We had these interactions where I helped him with his werewolves, and as the Arsene Society, we established this blood brothel in his domain. He seems incredibly excited to see me again, and I join him, but before we get into a conversation, there were 3 other kindred who were trying to finish some business with him, so I remain standing next to him as these kindred hand over this list that they completed. And Baron Temple says that before he gives them what they want, they all have to give him a compliment as the final task. I get this feeling that he's trying to impress me in this moment, but I don't act impressed at all because, as I tell him, he's basically paying people to give compliments to him. So I don't know what about that should be impressive. He finishes the deal with the kindred in front of him, and we start having this fun little banter. I say fun, however, the first thing we talk about is the fact that his domain is still infested by werewolves, and it's worse than before. Throughout our entire conversation, I try to gauge what kind of person he is, and he seems to be enjoying this a lot, saying that he's happy I don't find him annoying. And he says that the bravest thing he could be doing right now is not taking care of those werewolves, but standing right here next to me. I do bring up the reality show and ask him why he's not stopping Nelly G from doing it, because clearly it is a big danger to the Masquerade. He says that he promised not to intervene for a few nights or until it actually became a problem, to which I respond that that is quite a passive position to be standing in. However, he assures that there will be no problem because anyone who has stood against him in the past is now gone. You have to imagine, our entire conversation was a little bit flirty. We were standing close to each other, there was a light touch of a hand on the arm, and at a certain point I noticed that Toledo was standing a meter away, impatiently waiting to enter himself into the conversation. He manages to do so, breaking us apart a little bit. And in this last little conversation that we have, the funny thing I want to mention is that one of the first things Toledo says is that, oh, by the way, we're dating. I wrap an arm around Toledo, but before we can continue the conversation, it's time for the Serafin Club. So, Serafin Club time. I walk into the club on the arm of Baron Temple. One could say I have the habit of walking into rooms on the arms of any man except for mine. One wouldn't be wrong saying that. Not at all. As we walk into the Serafin Club, the hosts of the party are explaining a little game going on. A game in which kindred can participate in certain challenges and at the end of the night try to win some prizes. These prizes were basically taken from the participation fee, you could call it. Some of these challenges required you to give some of your blood or give out boons. And at the end of the evening, this was all put in one big pot, and some of the winning kindred who had gotten a certain amount of tarot cards could grab from the pot and see what they won. It was a very fun concept, and while I wasn't planning on fully competing in these games, Baron Temple and I were teasing each other about bravery, because, well, one of the challenges was about bravery. It was the challenge held by Ignatius from Clan Ventru, who was played by Chris. His challenge was apparently all about proving your bravery, and as Lucius, another Ventru played by Caden, joins our conversation, Baron Temple makes clear that he's trying to impress me, to which I simply respond, well, you want to impress me, prove your bravery, there's a challenge right here in front of us which you could participate in to prove your bravery. He accepts, and we walk up to the line of the game. At a certain point, it becomes clear to us that the challenge we participate in is that you hand out a boon, and depending on the level of the boon, you get the tarot cards. However, Baron Temple, and honestly, I don't have any interest in those tarot cards to participate in the actual game. It's just about the bravery aspect. He says, well, I'll do you one better. I'll just hand out 3 major boons to the next 3 kindred in line, to do with as I wish. On one hand, not liking the arrogance of this, on the other hand, finding it a pretty cool idea as a player myself, I say, how about we make them combined boons? We both write our names on them, and these kindred can ask this boon from the both of us combined. These little boon cards will come to bite me in the ass later on in game, especially that little heart I signed my name with. Stay tuned for that. We give out these boon cards to the next 3 kindred in line and split ways for the moment, after which I spot Toledo, and I have a thing to talk to him about. I don't remember who exactly came up to ask me about this earlier on in the night, but someone came up to ask me if it was true that Toledo and I were going to get married. The question had jarred me a little bit, and I, of course, said no to that person when they asked, but now that I saw Toledo, I wanted to make sure that it was not an idea that was in his head, because it made me very nervous. I mean, we were trying to give this whole dating thing an actual shot, but to get married right now was like 10 steps beyond, and generally only a few months ago, I came to terms with the fact that kindred can still feel love. I was not prepared to talk about anything related to marriage. So I walk straight up to Toledo, who is talking to his coterie mate, Elle, played by Wes. And I tell him, just to be clear, we're not getting married. He is completely taken aback by me bringing this topic up, and he says, well, no, we weren't planning to, and we have this little back and forth of like, no, I wasn't planning to either, but just to make sure we're just starting this dating thing, like, it's such a far off step, but like, we're not planning to get married, right? I do immediately regret bringing up the topic though, because it seems to have sparked something in Toledo, and Elle doesn't help with that, saying that he can actually officiate the wedding because he's ordained to. As a player, it's very fun for me to note here that Bully actually had no idea where this came from, and he thought that Ida was just being mean to Toledo for no reason, after which I explained to him that I had heard the rumor in-game, but Ida actually never explained that. As we continue conversing, Toledo asks what I was talking to Baron Temple about, to which I respond that I was asking about the reality show that Nelly G was planning, and Toledo responds with, well, you were talking to him quite long, and that grinds on my nerves, so I immediately retort to him with, well, are you counting my minutes in conversation with other men now? Because that doesn't sound healthy and quite controlling, actually. Deciding not to fight in front of other people, we move off to the bar to go get a drink. And he switches the conversation around to asking how I know Aeneas, because apparently Elodie had gone to Toledo and said that Aeneas and me were getting very emotional together, so Toledo was shocked and immediately on edge because of that. Toledo also straight up asks if I was getting emotional with Aeneas. Through this build-up of negative emotions in my head, I'm getting agitated again, the walls are coming back up, so I just say that Aeneas and I knew each other from way back when. It doesn't matter, I wasn't getting emotional with him or anything. And not one of my proudest moments, I walk away. Yes, we're once again at the point in the story where I storm off from conversations with Toledo. I go off to find my comfort person, who is Raphael, played once again by Ira. And as I just stand there with him a little bit, having some chit chat, he asks me why people are asking him about me being off or different anyway. I say that I, well, wouldn't know, but I've been trying to be better or read these stupid self-help books that Toledo has been giving me. And once again, as I'm talking to Raphael, I just more and more so get this feeling that I am not what Toledo deserves, and that personal growth is hard. Really, really fucking hard. For the next incredible scene that's about to occur, I need to give you a little flashback to Meet the Authorities, where at a certain point, outgame, Inez, who was played by Caroline, and I had made this joke that we were the Mean Wives Club. I hope you can see it, but Caroline even gave me this incredible pin, which I was wearing on my lanyard the entire time. And so back in this funny conversation we had, Inez had dropped the word wife guy because her partner, Mara, who is played by Eli, was apparently a wife guy. And she explained this by saying, well, if your lover drinks a drink that they think is really nice, the first thing in their mind is that they want to go tell their lover about it. So back to present time in this conversation with Raphael, Toledo joins in, and me trying to just make light conversation, I ask Toledo if he's a wife guy. He's taken aback by this question and asks where I got it from, but to get out of this awkward conversation myself, I spot Inez just a few steps away, and I call Inez to us. Now I'll tell you, I don't know exactly how this conversation topic started, but apparently Inez had been calling Toledo a bottom baron. And so in this funny conversation that somehow happened, I asked Inez to explain why she'd been calling Toledo this bottom baron, which I didn't understand at all. However, she says that she calls him that because he's passive and he doesn't do anything, which I kind of can agree to. I mean, he's trying to be this big baron, but in his barony, literally one of his rules is Kindred can do whatever they want. He won't interfere. He's only there to take the hits from above when the camera comes knocking, for example. That's very passive behavior, and that's not really being a leader. It's just being the best person to leave everyone alone. At that point, I also meet Samantha's sire, Wormwood, because apparently he's here now. Both Samantha and Wormwood join our conversation and make this point of Toledo being passive very, very clear. Toledo doesn't get it, but I also chime in and say, well, yeah, you're kind of passive because you didn't make a choice. He claims that he does do things because he helped both Samantha and Wormwood out, but that doesn't help his point because I explained to him he's literally helping out both the killer and the victim. That's not helping out, that's being passive. He needs to make a choice because in my mind, Samantha deserves help. I think that Samantha should be freed from Wormwood, who killed her and brought her back without any say in it. And, well, yeah, Samantha right now is grateful to still be around because, of course, this is better in her head than being dead. But I still see being Kindred as becoming this monster, and there are some people in this world that just don't deserve to be dragged into this. Samantha, again, seeming like one of those people to me. So the fact that Toledo is convinced that him helping both of them is a good thing just triggers me immensely because he's helping both the killer and the victim. The conversation isn't going anywhere, so I decide to remove myself from it and go to the dance floor a little bit to just mingle. The only thing left of note to say that night is that during the last hour of Serafin Club, Toledo comes up to me with someone I had never seen before. He introduces her as Lucky, someone he knew back from his rodeo days, and he claims that she is his closest friend. He introduces me and says that I'm his girlfriend, the one he had been talking about before. And seeing as this night had already worn me down a lot, I try to be nice, but it's just not in me right now. So I have to admit I'm not the most inviting to her. She is this very sweet woman, and at a certain point she even offers me this flower that she has in her hand. I'm not planning to accept it, but Toledo insists that I accept it because she is one of his closest friends. We have a bit of an awkward conversation there where I do try to inquire about their rodeo days together. But in all of this, it seems like Toledo is embarrassed towards Lucky. While I didn't find out in the scene, as a player, I found out that Toledo in that moment was feeling embarrassed because, well, he tries to be this big winner of Unlive, but there he was, standing next to his closest friend, pretending to be super happy in this situation, but then introducing a girlfriend to her that was being super dismissive and not that nice to him. In turn, seeing those emotions on Toledo make me feel bad. Again, maybe I should try harder to change to be what he deserves to be because he genuinely is a very nice and innocent person. He also is one of those kindred that doesn't deserve to be in this unlife. Even if before I manipulated him and used him, I now fully switched into thinking that he deserves to be protected. So I need to do everything I can to protect him and be there for him and give him what he deserves in Unlife. With those thoughts, the lights go out and Serafin Club comes to an end. And after a good amount of rest, we find ourselves in the first full night of the LARP. As always, we start the first full night of LARP with a faction meeting. And once again, I was in the Arsene Society faction. The thieves and scoundrels of Kindred Society. I decided to take a step back from the faction plot this time, because in my mind, I had already built up this personal story that I was going to play out, and there were a lot of new players in Arsene Society. I wanted them to have something that they could jump on and solve up until the end. So I decided to play more of a supportive role, and I became the sugar mommy of Arsene Society. Basically, I kept our resources, and members of the society could come to me with questions or help or asking for resources. One plotline that did really intrigue me though, and I do want to mention, is a plotline involving VHS tapes, one of which I also saved in my little scrapbook. Let me get it. Here you can see the original VHS tape cover that we got. Basically, these tapes were gruesome, very masquerade breaching, and there were missing people in them. So, some of the Arsene Society decided to investigate and try to find the source of whoever was making these VHS tapes, but to find the source, they needed to gather all 10 VHS tapes. So they had their work cut out for them. After the meeting concludes, we go into the main floor, and after the speech of the Barons, I find myself next to Renato. And let me just tell you, tonight, Ida was feeling very emotionally vulnerable. She had spent the first part of the night pondering on this feeling that she had, where she truly believed more and more that Toledo deserved better than her. And maybe she wasn't trying hard enough to change herself to be the person Toledo deserved. Well, you can try and work on stuff yourself, but hey, we're also kindred, and I had come up with the idea that, well, maybe if I couldn't change myself in the ways that was needed, there were disciplines that could do that. I could ask Aventru or La Sombra to dominate me. I could ask them to change an intrinsic part of my personality, some way that I could be more like the person I thought Toledo deserved. And while I hadn't made that decision just yet, it was definitely something that was lingering in my mind. I started a small conversation with Renato, in which I asked him if he believes kindred can actually love. He positively responds with yes, and even says that he has fallen in love multiple times throughout his many years on this earth. But one thing that he says, and that sticks with me, is that kindred love can never last forever, because, well, kindred can't promise eternity. They live forever, so how can you promise someone eternity when you can't be sure of that? In his lifetime, every single time he's been in love with another kindred, it has ended at some point. Our conversation is cut short as Inez approaches me, followed by Mara and Toledo. Now, this is a moment that I will give you a content warning for sexual content. Nothing graphic, but I will mention some things. Inez approaches me and says that I should check my email, while Toledo comes to stand next to me and immediately pleads me not to, which leaves me very curious. They are bantering, and I pull up my phone, look at my email, questioning how she got my email. I open up the mail that I got, and I see a video, which starts playing. Inez explains that it's a fake sex tape she made, pretending to be Toledo together with another willing person. Apparently she had threatened to do this if Toledo played the victim card again, which last night he did. But as she explains that this is a fake though, she also says that, well, at a certain point she was standing in front of him undressed, and at that moment he had wanted to have sex with her, but she denied him, and he had been very disappointed by that. I take all of this in, unsure how to feel about it, giving an accusing look at Toledo though, but the conversation kind of splits up where Inez and Toledo are gone for a moment, and I'm left with Mara. Putting all of this aside for a moment to focus on later, I get back to this conflicted feeling that I was having before. And I know that Mara and Inez are devoted to each other, and I kind of recognize myself a little in Mara and the way he would do anything for Inez. Mara notices something is up, and I start having this awkward but true conversation where I tell him that I think Toledo deserves better, and that maybe I should change to make that happen. I ask Mara if he would change an intrinsic part of himself, if it would make Inez happier. And as I thought, Mara said that he would do anything he could to make Inez happy and to be the person that Inez deserved. Once again, the consideration of dominating myself to change for Toledo becomes stronger and stronger, but Mara cuts off my thoughts, saying that there's nothing wrong with me though. I don't have to change. Toledo has to accept me the way that I am, and maybe even Toledo needs to change in the way he thinks or acts in this unlife, because it's not very kindred-like. That charms me a little bit, and this ends up being a very wholesome, emotional conversation between two people that clearly don't know how to out their emotions that well, but seem really genuine in wanting to be better for their partner. He puts a comforting hand on my shoulder and walks off to find Inez, after which I turn around and I all but stumble into this old lady. Let me introduce you to Tilly, who's played by Outstar, a very lovely, outspoken older lady. I think this is one of the first times that I've seen an older vampire, so I can't help but immediately ask her the question that's been on my mind, and I ask her if she thinks kindred can still love. She has all of this energy, and she says that of course kindred can still love. She has loved multiple times. She has passionately loved multiple times. As she starts giving me some words of advice, and I am kind of astounded by this wise kindred in front of me, at some point the conversation turns into Tilly considering to put feed pics online. But that's besides the point. This conversation ends with Tilly giving some really good relationship advice, and I clock that while I'd never met this kindred before, I think I'll go to her again if I need some words of advice. To add into the mess of emotions already, I get a new kindred dumped into my lap as well. Namely, I have this short but fun interaction where an Arsene Society member who I had previously met, called Avery, who is played by Angelica, comes to introduce a new fledgling to me called Bliss, who's played by Alex. They all but drop Bliss in front of me and say that they are a very young fledgling looking to learn some ways, and that they thought I was the best person to teach them. I know, what a choice to make. Of course, by now, we know my flaw. When I see an innocent fledgling that I think deserves better, I latch onto them like a mother and I want to protect them. So lo and behold, another one. I think my adopted daughter count is at like 5 right now already. I shouldn't be taking on more, but who's gonna stop me? As I have a small conversation with Bliss, I definitely find out that she has a bit of a troubled past, and that her relationship with her sire also isn't great. They're not here with her right now, but she's a fledgling, so I immediately decide that if she's here all by herself, I'll try to take her under my wing. She also apparently got this boon card from Renato and asks me what ways she could use this for and what it actually resembles. So I give her a few ideas on how she can use this boon card, either to ask something from Renato or to trade it into someone else who wants the boon card. Bliss thanks me and walks off. A bit of time passes, and at a certain point I find myself close to Toledo again trying to be this considerate girlfriend that he deserves. We have one of our deeper conversations in a long while. He says that he doesn't like who he is right now because he feels like he has been changing, and he apologizes for last night, but he says that, well, the reason he's been acting a little different is because he committed diablerie. And he rambles on saying that he feels so different because of it right now, and he asks how I cope with it and how I stay myself, because now he knows just a glimmer of what I am constantly feeling, because I do it like so many times. How do I not lose myself? I have to stop him there because I am a little bit taken aback, and I ask him, well, how many times do you think I've diablerized someone? He thinks that I've diablerized like a dozen times, but I reply by saying, well, I've only done it as much as you have. It's true. I've only diablerized twice. Once with my own sire, and then the other time where I lost control with Rowan's sire. But somehow Toledo thought that my job of cleaning up certain kindred always involved me diablerizing them, that I liked doing that. I have to admit, I'm a bit dismayed that he thinks that I so willingly diablerize left and right, while that was never the truth. As we're having this conversation, he starts spilling things left and right. He at a certain point mentions that apparently he blood bonds at just one sip from someone, which will be relevant later on. But then he also mentions, as I say that I've only diablerized twice, well, is it because Calamity has been stopping you? I ask him what he's talking about, and he says that he apparently hired Calamity, another kindred, to spy on me, and that if I were to be diablerizing someone, that she would stop me. The fact that he hired someone to spy on me sinks in as I get angry and say, we'll be talking. I'm called away to be the sugar mommy for the Arsene Society members, and as that interaction comes to an end, I rush back into the room trying to look for Toledo. However, as I do, I pass by Kata, who you might remember from Atlanta. Knowing that she's also kind of this motherly figure in a way to me, I cave in and I ask her for some advice. As I rush towards her, I ask her, hey, if you knew that Dimitri had hired someone to spy on you, how would you act? She responds with, hey, I'm having a bit of a rough night, so take that into account with my answer, but, you know, I'd beat him up, honestly, if I found out about that. I say, cool, got it, yeah. I'll listen to that advice, and I rush a little bit further to try and find Toledo, who is standing next to Tilly, our favorite elderly vampire. As I arrive next to the both of them, I immediately point a finger at Toledo and I say, I won't beat you up right now. And I turn to Tilly and I say, hypothetically speaking, if your lover hired someone to spy on you, would you beat them up? She responds saying, no, why would I beat them up? Well, if I think about it, like, actually it seems very romantic if my lover were to hire someone to spy on me. It shows that they care, and I think it's a very loving gesture, actually. This completely confuses me because, well, before I got the advice to beat Toledo up, but then now this elderly vampire who had given me great advice before and I actually trusted to be really wise was saying that, well, no, this was actually really loving gesture and it showed that Toledo cared about me a lot. And we have this great amusing scene where both Toledo and me are actually very confused by her, but are getting so influenced by her wise words, her advice, that our mindsets are completely shifting in this way to think along with her and to actually see reason in what she is saying, that this is, yeah, a caring and kind gesture. And so I ask her, well, what would you do them? So you wouldn't beat them up? To which she responds, no, I wouldn't beat him up, but I would, fuck him violently. That breaks us a little bit, but we are so confused and actually agreeing with this old woman that she says, well, you could go back there behind a curtain and I could watch, or you could like go somewhere else, that's also fine. And we're like, yeah, thank you for your advice. And we look at each other, we're like, do you want to go? Suffice to say, we go out into the hallway and Toledo and Ida have a great time in game. They are fixed for the moment. Out game, Bully and I are just having a chat, letting some time pass by to make it realistic, and we are both left standing there in the hallway, admitting how we're so confused right now because, well, this old lady fixed our characters for the moment, and we don't really know where to go from here. After an appropriate amount of time, we go back inside, both of us happy and fixed for the moment in our relationship, and I go deal with some Arsene Society stuff a little bit more. At a certain point, I yet again find myself gravitating towards Baron Temple, and I hear him out, help him out a little bit about this problem that was going on with his accountant. There's a dilemma, I try to help him out, and it turns into this little flirtatious banter again. It's a very fun scene. Remember when I told you this little card would come and bite me in the ass? Specifically, this little heart on my name? Toledo found out about the boons, and as I am having this banter with Baron Temple, I spot him a few steps away. A few coterie members trying to stop him as he holds up one of these cards, and he says, "What's this? Are you cheating on me with him?" Leave it up to Toledo to turn a boon situation into something completely different. At that moment, the evening is coming to an end, so the barons all get up on a stage to give a little speech, but I'm left standing there with Toledo, him holding this boon card still and saying, "Well, are you cheating on me?" To which I reply, "It's just a boon card. No, I'm not cheating on you. This is like a political thing. It has nothing to do with cheating on you." And then he says, "Well, why did you sign your name with a little heart on the eye?" I don't have a good response for that, honestly. I don't know why I did. I blanked out when I did. But I still tell him it's not cheating. And we have this scene where we are standing next to each other and he is holding up the card. Baron Temple is one of the barons who's on the stage, and he says, I'm going to go up there right now and beat him up. And I tell him, no, you're not gonna do that. And let's be honest, you won't even get through the crowd of people here to do that because physically you're not capable of that. That's alright, but you can't. And I even physically take his hand in mine so that he doesn't go rush to the stage and do something stupid or foolish. And he goes on this rant saying, well, is it his barony? Is mine not big enough or impressive enough? Because I'll take the valley. I'll become Baron of the Valley if that's what you want. I keep trying to make clear to him that boon card didn't mean anything and that there's nothing to worry about, but he is not listening to me. People break off into conversations again after the speech, and Toledo goes to a table where Elodie is sitting. Following swiftly, I go up to the table as well, and Toledo is still being very mad about this boon, saying to Elodie that this is cheating and asking her if she agrees that this is cheating. That pisses me off because that is my adopted daughter, so he is trying to convince her that this boon in some way is cheating. And in my building rage, I tell her, no, that is not cheating, that's political. He did way worse things to me, and at least I'm putting in the effort to try and be healthier, to try and read those self-help books and try to be a better person. And Elodie starts to kind of agree with him that the boon thing is kind of weird, so I immediately go to the only other route I have to cling on to, and I say, no, this is way less cheating than this is. And I pull up my phone and I pretend to show Elodie, my adopted daughter, the fake sex tape from Toledo with another woman. I know you don't have to say it, I'm a great mom. So I show her this tape and I tell her that he was in front of a naked woman and he was so disappointed that nothing happened there, and that's way more cheating towards me than anything I did with these boons. Toledo is still furious and he's not listening to anything I'm saying, and he is asking how many of these boons are out there and that he will do whatever it takes to get all of these boons for him. Doesn't matter what he needs to give out. Now keep in mind, I already know that Toledo has a history of handing out life boons or major boons or whatever it takes, so this is really dangerous what he's saying, and he's not making any sense right now. He's also just not listening to me or not hearing what I'm saying. At that moment, our conversation is joined by another couple, Raphael and Helia, who's played by Vun, who we have met before, but they're apparently also having a fight, and Helia doesn't want anything to do with Raphael, so Raphael comes to stand next to me and Helia goes to stand with Toledo, trying to talk to him about what's going on. Raphael stokes the fires a little bit with me by saying, well, apparently he doesn't want to listen to you, but he does want to listen to another woman. That gets me even more angry, and Raphael offers to walk away with me. Toledo hears this and he points a finger at me and says, if you walk away right now, you can stay away. I tell him that he cannot play that card with me right now, to which he gets agitated and pulls a stupid move by turning away from me with his back and throwing the boon card on the table, to which I at least see my in to make sure that he doesn't have all of these boon cards by reaching out, taking the boon card from the table, putting it in my pocket, and being a Ravnos and having some neat little lineage things here and there, I have the ability to make illusions that I make physically real for a certain amount of time. So when he turns his back, of course I tell him that the boon card is still right there on the table, but in reality he knows that I stole the actual boon card and put it in my pocket. Toledo gets into a conversation with Helia, and I do decide that maybe it's best to walk away for now. When things die down a little bit, Raphael, Amadi, who is Toledo's coterie mate, played by Amir, and I walk off to the side a little bit, and we have this conversation about how Toledo is being quite dangerous with his actions. We discuss that his actions are quite rash and that maybe he should realize that he's doing some foolish things by making him feel the consequences of it. Maybe we go around and see who he already gave major boons to in order to get these cards, and we ask all of those people to use their boons against him so that Toledo knows the impact of handing out so many boons to other kindred. However, as we're standing there, that idea doesn't just feel right to me, and I start saying, maybe we should protect him from himself. Maybe we should find another way to make sure that he is safe and he doesn't do these rash, bold moves anymore that put himself in danger because of, well, the ones he loves. And at that moment, it's also the first time that I consider there is a way I can protect him from himself, make him safe, control him by blood bonding him. He did say that he fully gets bound with just one sip. Maybe that would solve all of our problems and it would let me keep him safe. Even though I find the idea of blood bonding disgusting because it's a twisting of emotions and it's all fake, but just maybe it wouldn't be such a bad idea. I see Toledo and Helia having their conversation, and I decide to go listen in with my heightened senses. I catch the middle of their conversation, where apparently Helia is going to do something to Toledo's soul, and it's gonna change him so much that Toledo wants another day just to prepare for it. He says that whatever they're planning to do, he wants me to be there, he wants me to see it, and apparently whatever they would do, it would save his soul. I kind of get the gist that this has something to do with the diablerie that he committed before. Helia agrees, but says that in return, as payment, Toledo has to become Bahari, whatever that means. I will ask about that definition later to Raphael. The conversation turns into this therapy session after that, where Helia says that Toledo should stop letting other women touch him. Apparently, Inez was playing with Toledo's cords. Literally, he wears like these strings and Inez was apparently touching them, but it seems that Toledo just has a weakness for Inez. As a player, I know that this is because Inez has used Majesty on Toledo before. And as they are practicing this thing of Toledo having to say no when Helia is touching him, he sighs and says that it would just be so much easier if he were blood bonded to me. Toledo is addicted to the blood bond, and every single previous relationship he has had was built on a blood bond, which made it feel so sweet to him. And this is the first time that he's actually trying to build a relationship without a blood bond, but that doesn't mean it doesn't still appeal to him. He says that if he were to be bonded to me, he would know what I would want that way. It would be so much easier. But Helia responds saying that if Ida is truly a different person, then she wouldn't want Toledo to be bonded to her. As Toledo calms down a little bit in this conversation, but Amadi joins their table as I'm listening in, Amadi decides that one way of temporarily protecting Toledo is by dominating him into giving out no more major boons. I would say that's helpful, but we all know that Toledo also has a penchant for giving out life boons, so that's not any better. And so we come to the second and final night of the LARP. Remember how Helia and Raphael were also having a fight between the two of them? Turns out that was because Helia was apparently wearing this necklace that made her not want to be around any member of the Auroral Shield, which is another faction at DE, and Raphael is part of that faction. So we start the evening off with Raphael and me walking in, and him saying that he wants to get that necklace away from Helia, so I offer to help him. I can make both of us invisible, get him close enough so that he can take the necklace, and then he says that he has his own escape route. So we go along with that plan. Coming close enough, Raphael being able to yank the necklace off of Helia and disappearing into the abyss, the Sombra things and all of that. However, as I'm left there standing with Helia, I decide to show myself, and she thanks me for helping because she realizes that it was the necklace giving her all of these wrong emotions about Raphael. So she's gonna have to go apologize to him, but the two of us are left standing there having a conversation. And I tell her straight up that I listened in on whatever they were talking about. She explains that she can do a kind of ritual that would help him with the humanity loss that he had from the diablerie by literally taking that stain onto herself. It's apparently what she does as Bahari, and I go into that saying, yeah, about that, if Toledo wants to try this ritual thing, he can, but I don't want him becoming Bahari, because apparently I had learned from Raphael that they are all about suffering and taking suffering upon themselves, and I don't want that for Toledo. The man already puts enough suffering on himself. So I ask her to once again explain what Bahari are, and in that explanation, she says that apparently Toledo was once Bahari, and that's where he came from. Something I didn't know about him. Taking that into account, I know that I can't fully stop him from becoming Bahari if he really wants that, but I tell her that, well, she shouldn't take it as a prize for doing the ritual. If he wants to become Bahari, she can ask him a few nights afterwards so that he can willingly choose to. In my own head, I'm already thinking, well, if it's a few nights away and I possibly bond him, then I can make him not choose that. to keep him safe. She starts tearing up a little bit in our conversation, and she says that she's actually jealous of what Toledo and I have. We are clearly putting in the work for each other, trying to make this relationship thing work, and, well, her and Raphael aren't doing that great. She knows that Raphael is keeping a lot of secrets from her, and they're trying to deal with that, but the fact that she says that she's jealous of Toledo and me leaves me feeling all kinds of uncertain. We end the conversation there. I'm not sure what to make of it, but I'm approached by Marcus yet again, and he seems quite distressed. I knew that there were some things going on with the La Sombra, so when he came up to me, a little frantic, and asking if he can ask a favor of me, I kinda know that it's nothing good, really. He says that he only needs a minute of my time, but he wants to ask something important of me. He noticed that I take care of Isabella. She has been coming to me every so often these nights, calling me mommy and giving me little trinkets or asking for advice throughout the past 2 nights already. So he says that he noticed that, and that he's asking me if anything were to happen to him tonight, that I take care of her, I protect her. In my own head, I'm thinking, well, I'm already doing that, but I tell him I'm willing to do that, but what would he pay for it? He gives me a major boon from Clan La Sombra in its entirety, meaning that I could ask this boon from anyone that's a La Sombra. And I promised him that if anything were to happen, that I would keep Isabella safe, and he has my word. And with that, he walks off to do whatever it is he's about to do. However, as I'm holding this boon, I turn around and I see Bliss again, and I think this is a perfect moment actually to use this. I walk up to her, I ask her how her nights have been, if she's feeling safe, if things are working out for her, and after a little bit of chit chat, I hand her the boon. She asks what it is, and I say, I want you to have it. It's a boon that you can ask from any La Sombra clan member, and they will have to help you out with something. I think it's much more useful to you than it would ever be to me, so just have it. It's a genuine act of kindness in this awkward state of not knowing how to portray my feelings, but still trying in little ways that matter, and I desperately want to feel good about something. She thanks me for it and says that I'm actually a really nice person. We already know what I do in those cases. I walk off, and I cannot handle an emotional conversation like this. However, as I walk away, I spot Aeneas again, talking about emotional conversations, but he's one of the few people I can't walk away from. I ask him if he has a moment to sit. I'm struggling with myself a bit right now, and truly what I think would make me feel better is talking to Aeneas, who I used to talk to a whole lot back when we were a coterie. We sit down, we talk about the past a little bit, how we both actually thought the other was dead. Aeneas says that he's so happy he found a purpose now, that he has Elodie who he cares for, and I tell him that I trust him with Elodie, and while I also care for her and protect her, that if it were to come down to it, I would trust him fully to keep Elodie safe and not be there myself anymore. He has changed, but I've also changed. He also asks me why I'm together with Toledo, to which I respond, well, I used to manipulate him, use him, and well, Aeneas knows my tactics all too well. He's seen it in the past, but I tell him something's different now. I actually like being around Toledo and I think he deserves better than me. But as those doubts once again slip into my mind, they are stopped completely by Aeneas taking my hand in both of his and saying, you are perfect. You don't need to change. You never need to change. You are exactly what he deserves. You are more than he deserves even. Another push into the wrong direction. We leave that sweet moment there. And a few moments later, I find myself in a conversation with Inez again. I tell her that I know that there has been some things between her and Toledo in the past, and that I'm fine with all of it. She just shouldn't try anything again anymore. And we have this fun little understanding where we would both do a lot of bad things, but we respect each other just too much to do any of that and to act on it. So we have this understanding as mean wives that we will not get in each other's way. As I talk to her, I get pissed about the boons and I tell her about my conversation with Mata as well, to which she yet again reinforces the idea that I shouldn't change. I am fine the way I am. It's Toledo who needs to accept that, and Toledo who doesn't deserve me. But I don't agree with that, of course. I think he deserves me just better, but maybe that's wrong of me to think. Maybe there is no problem here. The only problem is that he needs to be more careful and be protected from himself. I ask her what she would do for someone that she loves. Would she protect them, even if it meant protecting them from themselves? And she heavily agrees with that. She says that she would. If it meant keeping them safe, she would do anything. So that's another push towards thinking, maybe it isn't a bad idea to blood bond Toledo. We also have this fun little mean girl scene where we're sitting at the table and I get a little pissed about the boons, to which she is stoking the fire, saying that I have all rights to be pissed about his reaction to the boons, it's just boons, and to get back at him with a little petty revenge, we should spread even more boons like that. Both of us make a combined boon, Inez and me, right there, and we give it to the next person at the table, namely Summer, who is played by Jem. She was this lovely, naive caitiff who just accepted our boon not knowing what she got herself into, and she tried to ask why we were doing that, to which we said, well, it's a little bit of revenge, you don't have anything to do in it, you just have a free boon, enjoy it. As a few more moments pass by after that conversation, I end up standing in front of Samantha at a certain point. I hadn't seen her in a long while now, and I ask her if she's doing alright. Her sire's around, and apparently he had been talking about wanting to break a blood bond and leaving town, and I ask her, well, is she going with him? Apparently there was also talk about me wanting to kill Wormwood, to which I respond to her, well, no, I wouldn't do that. Do I think he deserves final death? Yeah, I do, but I think it's up to her to enact that and not me. She doesn't agree with me though, and we get into this very interesting conversation about morals, to which she asks me, well, who gets to decide who's good and who's bad? What makes you the person who can decide whether or not someone deserves to still be around or not? I'm not used to someone fighting back to me about my beliefs and morals, so I'm taken aback by this, and she leaves the conversation. Honestly, that's such a powerful move. I was left stunned for a second, but I regained composure after that, and I turn around, spotting Tilly, the one woman whose advice I need right now above all else. She is the deciding factor about what I should do in this situation or not. Again, even though I find blood bonding itself disgusting as an act, maybe I really should consider it if it means keeping Toledo safe from himself and from others. I walk up to Tilly and I tell her that her advice previously did really help, but I have another question for her. Hypothetically speaking, what would you do to protect someone you love? Would you do things that you yourself don't believe in? Which she says, yeah, she would absolutely do that if she loved someone. And then I just straight out, hypothetically, ask her, would you blood bond that person? She turns the conversation around a little bit, and she says, you know, some people say that birds aren't happy in cages. They say that they would be much happier free outside, roaming around. But people are wrong because, well, if the bird is outside the cage, it has to worry about getting food suddenly, trying to get safety, being safe from other bigger predators, and being responsible for its own survival instead of being taken care of. You see, there's some birds who would be way happier flying around freely outside, but some birds are happier being in a comfortable cage. That's just the way they prefer things. So she asks me, does your bird, in this hypothetical question, want to be in the cage? Do you think they would be happier to be in the cage? And I tell her, because I had overheard Toledo talking to Helia before, that, well, my bird definitely wants the cage. I know that Toledo secretly wants to be blood bonded to me, so I say that my bird wants the cage. I just didn't know if I wanted to give the cage to the bird, but it seems that maybe I should, actually, because, well, he'll be happier that way and I'll be able to keep him safe. I ask her, well, do I put the bird in the cage forcefully, or do I offer the cage to the bird and see if it goes in willingly? And Tilly, the wise woman that she is, says, well, if you know that your bird wants the cage, you just need to offer it in the most appealing way, and it'll go in by itself. And she says, well, if you're gonna offer the cage, oh, you can always tell me and I can go watch invisibly if you do. To which I say, yeah, if I have the time for that, I will. But I thank her for her advice, solidifying in my mind that everything points towards me not having to change, and maybe it being better that Toledo be blood bonded to me. I'd be able to keep him safe, and it's what he would want. So my thoughts on blood bonding there don't matter if it's all just to keep him safe and protect him. Because also, additionally, in my mind, remember when Renato told me that relationships or love between kindred always ends at some point? I also realized that if my relationship with Toledo ended at some point in the future, every time something ends with me, love-wise, I leave the other person behind broken. I break something in them, I use them, it's what I do, it's what I've done in the past, and things were to end with Toledo, I would just leave him broken again. I don't want that. So, again, the only way I can assure that things don't end and I don't leave him broken is if I blood bond him. It can't be mutual because then I can't stop him from making foolish actions, but if I bond him, I would also make sure that our thing doesn't stop, and so I don't leave him broken. I can keep him safe and happy besides me. And that's all that matters, really. That's how I fix this. So I walk into the other room and I see Toledo there. I go up to him, and I know that he just had a big meeting for some Anarch stuff, so I ask him how his meeting had gone, and I show some interest in it. And we have a soft and genuine conversation in a very symbolic way from, again, his conversation previously with Helia. I grab onto his cords around his neck and I play with them. And I say that there is something that we should discuss in a bit more of a private setting, so maybe we should get out of here. He grabs my wrist and looks down at it, saying that in moments like these, he just really wants to drink from me. It would be so much easier if he did, but he's proud of the work that we're putting in, and he sees the work I'm putting in, the effort that I'm trying to improve and get better. He says he's proud of us, and before I can hear any more of this, I tell him that we should get out of here. I take the hand that's holding my wrist in mine and I pull him outside of the room, out into the hallways again, to a back room. This was another scene that we as players talked out, but we didn't actually act out. But Ida starts undressing for Toledo, saying that she wants to protect him, and she wants to keep him around more than anything. She wants this to work and for them to stay together, and she knows that she wants this. As she says that, she takes out a small dagger that she keeps attached to one of her legs, and she makes an incision in her own neck. I know you want this, so I want to give it to you. I think we'll both be happy this way and I'll be able to protect you. In that moment, Toledo uses telepathy to know if I actually want this, if this was my idea or if someone planted this idea in my head. And I tell him that he just feels the strong need from me to protect him and that no one planted this idea in my head. Technically, I came up with it by myself. A lot of people just really encouraged it. He drinks from me and he offers his in return, but I say it's better that I not drink his blood. And he seems glad, actually, that I don't want his blood, which is very curious. The decision has been made. It's been done. There is no going back from this for a long while now, and at this moment I don't want to go back from this even. This is just the best option, and I'll deal with it at some point. This is what will fix us. We go back inside, and I leave him, squeezing his hand, saying that he needs to stay safely inside, and I'm going to go out with the Arsene Society just to fix some small things with those VHS tapes. I'll be fine and I'll be back. He just should stay inside. I go off and we have this fun little scene. So remember that I told you about the VHS tapes from the Arsene Society before? The faction members had gathered all of the tapes that we needed, and on the backside of those tapes there was a map that we followed, and we found the location where the director of these tapes was, and we went to the location. It turned out to be a Fae director of all things, And while a lot of us were influenced by him and it was a hard conversation, the only thing that really stopped him is by us basically shit-talking his work and saying, well, maybe it's better for you to go into podcasting or something because this clearly doesn't seem to be your type of medium. And apparently being mean to him was the solution, because suddenly he disappears out of view and we managed to find the missing people actually who he had forced to be in these VHS tapes. We get them out safely and they are now in the protection of the Arsene Society. Surely something will follow from this in the future because the director just disappeared, but we'll figure that out later. At this point, we go back into the Kindred Gathering, and to admittedly feel better about myself, I go and talk to Helia and Inez. I tell them both that I blood bonded Toledo. I justify it by saying that I'm trying to protect him. To Helia, I say that I'm only telling her because, well, she is one of his closest friends, so she deserves to know, and I don't really converse anymore on it with her. With Inez, I get immediate support, saying that it's the best decision for me to make, and I made the right decision, the right move to blood bond Toledo. Off in the distance, I spot Toledo talking to Aeneas, and I go to listen in. Toledo is confronting Aeneas about Elodie, and how Elodie should stay away from Aeneas, and Aeneas gives these retorts saying that Ida deserves way better than Toledo, but obviously, Toledo is now blood bonded to Ida, so he will do anything to protect her and to protect her honor. I join them, and Toledo tells me that multiple of his coterie members have left him now because, well, he's been proudly saying that I bonded him, and apparently some of the coterie members didn't agree with them, among which was Amadi, who approaches us, and he talks to me as I stand there, arm around Toledo. Toledo happier than ever before because he's bonded again. He has that good feeling. I feel conflicted about what I did, but it's to protect him. And so when Amadi approaches me, he says that he is disappointed in me. He didn't expect me to do this. And I just retort to him saying that we were going to do anything it took to protect Toledo from himself. And that was exactly what I was doing. I was protecting Toledo. Amadi says that if I'm controlling him, he can't control Toledo anymore, so he's going to leave the domain, and steps away from the conversation. I have to admit, surprisingly, this hurt a lot more than I thought it would, because, well, I got along with Amadi pretty well. We had this camaraderie thing going on, and I could always go to him for help or advice, but Amadi disapproving my actions actually left more of an impression than you would think. This scene ends with apparently Elodie being angry that I didn't go with her to retrieve an artifact, to which I tried to justify saying that I trusted her skills and of course she didn't need me, but this made it clear to me that in some way Elodie values the protection I give her and this mentorship role that I give her. So that's something curious. And then Lucius is also there and he says that I don't have to worry because he'll also be protecting Toledo. Oh, hell no. But that leaves us with the question, where do we go from here? Is this the good ending? Toledo is going to be safe from now on. I'll be able to control his actions, what he agrees to, where he goes. He'll be safe. But where we were trying to make things real and work before, we reverted to everything being fabricated once again. And it also leaves me with this gnawing question of what right do I have to be the judge in all of this? Actually, I've been acting like it for my entire unlife now. Acting on these morals that I have, this righteous feeling that I have, desperately try to cling on to, but maybe it's been doing more harm than good. And maybe Kindred Society is even more fucked than I knew, because in a situation where one of the two is genuinely sweet and innocent and trying to help other people, and the other one is a person who doesn't recognize their own feelings and does all of these horrible deeds, if Kindred Society as a whole encourages the bad person in this relationship, then where does that leave us? Those are all questions that we might answer in the future, but it'll still be a long time before we possibly do, because that's the end of our story right here. Thank you so much for listening to this story again, for listening to me yap about this lovely event, this lovely community that I got to be in once again. I got to travel there as a creator for By Night Studios, something I'm truly grateful for. It makes it possible for me to experience all of these events which I normally couldn't. And you supporting my channel and these videos makes that possible. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching these videos, supporting my channel. A huge thank you to all of my lovely fellow players on the floor. A story like this wouldn't be possible without you. Also a quick thank you to everyone who was at Darkness Emergent LA 2026 and who came up to me and told me that my videos had made them more comfortable and ready for the experience for their first LARP. I appreciate you coming up to tell me so much. It's really why I make these videos, to try and have a positive impact on this hobby, this beautiful art form that is LARPing, and to encourage you to try it yourself and to explore, because who knows, you might really fall in love with it the same way I have. But with that, stay safe from the sun, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye bye.